Secret. Secret is a game of, well, secret identities, as probably the title hints at. Secret identities, bluffing, deduction, this sort of thing. It is set in the Cold War, allegedly. Well, it talks about the CIA, so it cannot be before the Cold War, but there are several pieces of art on the cards that make me think more about the 1930s, early 40s, that age. But in general, it is about the Cold War because we had the CIA, the KGB, and even the hippies. When I first learned about this game, I had to tell, I was a little bit skeptical because we already have so many good games out there about secret identities and conspiracies between, One Night Werewolf and One Night Alien Vampire and so on and so forth, The Resistance. A lot of offers. So do we really need another game about secret identities and conspiracies? Well, let's take a closer look at secrets and then we'll try to address that question. First thing that you will notice when you open the box is this really impressive set of plastic tokens. They look great. They are large, heavy, sturdy, and they represent the hippie faction, so to speak, the KGB and the CIA. At the beginning of the game, you will select a number of these tokens based on number of players, so that regardless of the number of players, there will be a good distribution of tokens. Then you will shuffle them and you will give one to each player. Suppose we have 4 players, and then there will be a token in the back. Then each player will look at their tokens so they know the faction that they're in. Depending on the number of players, with higher numbers of players, you may also get a chance of looking at someone else's token, so you get a sense of what other players may have. But you know what the options are: KGB, CIA, or hippies. Then you have this set of cards here representing various characters that you are trying to recruit or to exploit. And they have icons at the bottom that indicate the type of effects that the character can trigger, and also a value here in terms of points, which can be 0, can be positive, can be even negative. You shuffle these cards at the beginning of the game. There's also a smaller deck of bullet cards. These also are shuffled for the time being. They're set aside. Really, the engine of the game revolves around this deck here. Now, when it is your turn, when you're the active player, you draw 2 cards from here and you place them face up, making sure that the cards represent different characters. If not, then you keep drawing and you place the extra cards at the bottom of the deck. This would be perfectly valid. Now, you have also a board here that you can use, and it's pretty useful and important, to mark the characters that were just drawn. So here we have the double agent and the journalist, and we place these arrows here. Why is it important to mark them? Because now the active player that drew these 2 cards, look at them secretly, chooses one of them secretly, and places the other one at the bottom of the deck, and then this card, which has to be one of these 2, is offered to another player. The active player says, okay, Kevin, do you want that card? At that point, the player that was offered the card can do one of 2 things: refuse it or accept it. If the offer is accepted, then the player takes that card, flips it face up, and places it in their play area. And whatever effect is indicated by the icons is triggered right away. Otherwise, if the offer was refused, then the player that made the offer, that is the active player, takes the card, flips it face up, places it in their personal area, and it is now the active player that resolves that effect. As you can imagine, some effects will allow you to damage the opponent, a lot of effects will allow you to gain intelligence, that is to try to figure out who has what tokens, and other effects will allow you to manipulate things by switching tokens around, giving tokens to other people, and so on and so forth. Here we have a player aid of what the characters do. We're gonna go over that in a second. A couple of other things. If you have 2 cards with the same character in front of you, then you have to flip them face down face down, and they still stay there. They still count against the maximum number of cards that you can have, and we'll talk about that in a second. But now they're face down, their effect doesn't apply anymore, and they're worth 0 points. Also, if there is a player that has fewer cards in front of themselves than anybody else, the player gets the United Nations token, and the special power that the player has is that between when an offer is made and before it is accepted or refused, the United Nations player can simply take that card. So kind of like can hijack an offer. Now, back to the effects. Very important. What do the cards do when they get in your play area? The journalist, you must reveal your identity token to all players without looking at it yourself. As simple as that. I'm showing it to everybody without looking at it myself. Which, if it's at the beginning of the game, now everybody knows it, but there may be a case where I don't know exactly what my token is because some weird stuff happened, and now everybody knows it but me. How embarrassing is that? Detective. Secretly look at one identity token. This can be your own token, again, because sometimes you want to double check what you have. Another player's token or the token at the center of the table. Pretty self-explanatory, a good way of gaining knowledge. Oh, look at that. I am CIA, and now I know that there is a CIA token there. It is good if you're CIA or KGB to have allies, so maybe I'm going to try to move that token and give it to some other player. The scientist. The first scientist added to your display has no effect, but when you add the second one and you flip all of your cards face down, including both scientists. So this is not particularly good if it is your play area, unless you have a lot of negative cards. Then I guess having them worth 0 is better than having them as negative cards, but of course particularly powerful if you are using this to invalidate cards that the opponents have and that they're worth a lot of points. The diplomat revealed the identity token in the center of the table so players can see it. Then flip it face down. Then all of the players close their eyes and you must swap the center token with either the identity token of the player directly on your right or your left. Now everybody's gonna know that one of these two players is gonna be the CIA player. With the psychiatrist, swap two other players' identity tokens, and that is when a lot of confusion may happen. But good confusion, like you're wondering who has what now, darn it. I thought I had a good idea, and now I'm back to square one. Double agent, swap your identity token with the identity token in the center of the table, then secretly look at your new token. Politician, do not place this card in your display, instead place it in the display of another player of your choice and then secretly look at the player's identity tokens. Sort of like dote death. I'll give you something to get something in return. I give you something, but then I can look at your player's token. The assassin, you draw the top card from the bullet deck and secretly look at it, then you give it face down to another player who adds it to their display. The player who takes the bullet card cannot look at its value until the end of the game. So these are negative cards and you're just giving them that penalty. Both because it is a penalty, it is a negative number, and also because that fills up one of the slots that they can have in front of their in their play area. Why is this important? Because the game ends when a player has a certain number of cards in front of themselves. With 4 to 6 players, when a player adds a 5th card, the game ends at the end of that turn. With 7 to 8 players, so when a player adds the 4th card. So when the game is over, because a certain number of cards are in front of a player, that is a time where we count points and we reveal our identities, and this is something really cool, something I really like. The hippies are trying to keep things peaceful and not to get involved, so a hippie player will win by scoring low points. If a hippie player has the lowest score of every other player, then that hippie player wins the game. If there are multiple hippie players, they're still scoring individually. So if you have the hippie token, you want to go low. If you are going low, if you have very few points, then you want the hippie token. If a hippie player does not win the game, then you total all of the points that the CIA players have together with all of the points that the KGB players have. So CIA and KGB players work in teams. And at that point, the players in the team that has the highest score are the winners of the game. So a single player may win, a team may win. And this is pretty much how you play Secrets. So, as I said, first sight, this is a game that has a lot of things that we are familiar with, and again, at first sight, it seems fairly complicated for what it is. I mean, my first impression was like, well, I have to learn about all of these roles, plus there's going to be all the deduction element. This is going to be too much for what the game is, which is supposed to be, fairly light, not too hardcore secret identity games. But I had to say, I was pleasantly surprised because I found that the game flew much better than I expected. It was just moving in much more of a smooth fashion than I expected. I was playing it actually with casual gamers, not with hardcore gamers. And still, after a round or two, everybody figured out what the identities were for. Again, not just what each character did, but why you would benefit from a certain identity and what would be a good way of using it and what you should do to avoid becoming the victim of a certain identity. And what I really like was the fluctuating system of alliances that you had here. I see that you have a ton of points, but I'm CIA and you're KGB, so maybe I can try to make you lose some points by sending scientists there. Or even better, what if I can turn you into my ally? Then we're gonna score points. But in the meanwhile, you think that somebody gave you a hippie token and now you're trying to lose points. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing? There is a shifting system of alliances here, which turned out to be surprisingly thematic. The idea was trying to figure out who can be your best ally, and that can change dramatically because first I want to score a lot of points, now it turns out that I don't want points, I'm not going to have any allies. So it turns out to be pretty thematic as you try to identify which players could be valuable allies, and if they turn out to be enemy players, you're trying to turn them into friends, and everybody's studying everybody else. But again, in a certain sense, what really gives flavor and a certain unique identity is the fact that one of the parties, that maybe you at some point, has such radically different victory conditions. So it turned out to be that the dynamics of the game, that the social dynamics, the psychological dynamics were very, very compelling. I mean, I was really interested in the game. I was really drawn in. Everybody was paying attention without the game becoming, too heavy. Again, it's not 100% like casual game. It's a little more than beer and pretzel. I mean, you really have to pay attention. And the game is one that really invites people to do so. It won't be an effort. It's not a game where you really are playing it while you're thinking about something else and chatting about other stuff. I guess theoretically that's possible, but then you're really missing out the game. Missing out, and you're probably going to lose horribly, and somebody's going to be mad at you because you're going to make them lose if they are in a team with you. So the game, for I would say an extended filler, it had enough of a puzzliness, enough of a puzzle element to keep me interested without feeling cerebral, without feeling, too complicated. It just had enough to present me with interesting intellectual challenges. It created interesting bluffing elements and situations. I mean, I had to think, why is that player refusing that card? Why is the player giving me that card? Of course, another big element is the bluffing element, as I'm offering you a card, and maybe I'm offering to you because I want you to take it, because that will damage you, or because I hope you won't take it, and actually something that I want for myself. But again, if I have a card that interests me and I am the active player, I cannot get it until I offer it to you, and that was refused. So I'm playing this diabolical plan to hurt you. And then, of course, something happens. It turns out that, you're my friend, and I wish you had a lot of points, and I didn't know what I had done. As I said, the social, the psychological dynamics, and simply the abstract moving parts of the game really go well together and make for a fun experience. I enjoy playing this game. Now, I do not know that the game would work well with 7 and 8 players, which seems to be allowed in the game. I don't think I want to play with that number of players. I think like 5 players, 5, 6 players probably ideal. Above that, then the game may become both too complicated if you're actually trying to keep track of all that's happening, or feel random if you cannot really figure out what everybody has, and it's gonna be very hard. I'm just afraid that with that number of players, the game becomes slower, and also it forces you to do too much thinking for what the game has to offer. But again, with 5, 6 players, that seems to me like the right number. That seems to be the number where this game really can hit a sweet spot. So yes, if you like bluffing games such as Resistance or One Night Werewolf, you may enjoy this one. And yes, this game will be different enough to still deserve a place in your collection. It doesn't feel redundant. It doesn't feel much like any other game that I have. Although again, it belongs to that family, but within the family, it is a game with its own personality. Secrets. Really surprisingly original, surprisingly inventive, and quite unique game of a secret identity. It's definitely a game that I enjoyed.